So in this video I'm going to show you how to make this large ground stitch or square mesh stitch. It's very easy, only uses chains and double crochets. For the purpose of this video I've just used some double knit cotton with a 3mm hook. So to get it nice and neat you will be better off using a slightly smaller hook than you're used to for whatever yarn you're using. Natural fibres are always going to work better with these open mesh stitches because natural fibres such as cotton, wool and linen all have stitch memory, which helps set the stitch into place. What you'll find with plastic yarn such as acrylic is that the fabric becomes quite springy and often the stitches won't set into shape, so you won't get such a crisp square effect. So we're going to start with a slip knot loop on our hook and we're going to chain 32. So of course the thing to remember with this chain is that we are going to be working into it in a minute for the first row. So you don't want to make it too tight and you don't really want to make it too loose either. It always is a bit of a problem and it varies from one person to the other. So that's why swatching is really important, because you can identify whether you'll need to use a bigger or a smaller hook just for the starting chain. And again, this can vary from person to person. Over the years when I've been teaching, some people can do a starting chain with the exact same hook they're using for the whole rest of the project and it will be spot on. Other people need to go down by 0.5 or 0.25 and some people need to go up. It really is a very individual thing per person. So I'm just going to check that I have got 32 stitches. So I've actually got 34. I'm actually going to leave the extra 2 stitches on because I actually prefer to do a couple too many because I can reverse undo them at the end in case I've miscounted rather. It's better than having to start all over again, especially if you're making an extremely long starting chain. There's nothing worse than coming to the end and realizing you're one chain out or something like that. It's better to have too many chains left and we can reverse undo it, which I'll show you how to do later. So remember, I'm doing a section of fabric that is going to have 9 blocks in the grid, so 9 empty squares I'm going to be having. If you want more squares in your grid, you'll need to add a chain 3 for each additional each additional block rather. So my preference is to always work into the back ridge of the chain, but you may work into this starting chain however you like. We're going to be working into the 8th chain from the hook. So remember, we don't count the live loop, we're counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm putting my fingernail just before it so that I don't lose my eye as to where it's going. I'm doing a yarn over and I'm going to do a double crochet, which is a UK treble, into that 8th chain from the hook. So you'll end up with this funny little sort of loop. Then you're going to chain 2. So for this you need to keep the chains relatively tight and true to hook size. So by that I mean that the loop on the hook stays roughly the same size as you're making the chains, rather than naturally elongating them, which we often do when we're doing a relaxed style of crochet, or tightening them. So some people do this thing where every time they make a chain they inadvertently tighten it by pulling this piece to the left, so the working yarn pulling it to the left. See how I've made those really tight? So we don't want to do either of those. We just want to form the stitch true to hook size, which means the live loop stays the size of the hook, and then after we've drawn it off and pulled through we are not tightening it up in any way. You might already be doing that naturally, but as I say, when I've been teaching I notice a lot of people do quite a lot of random things with their chains. It will just look neater the whole stitch pattern will look crisper, neater and more defined if you crochet true to hook size in this instance for this stitch pattern. So yarn over, skip 2 chains, and you are going to double crochet or UK treble into the 3rd chain. So you can see that we're starting to make these like blocks just by using 2 very simple stitches, which is a chain and a double crochet, which is also known as a UK treble. So that's it really for this starting first row, which is kind of your setup row really. You're just going to keep doing that, making 2 chains true to hook size, and then 1, 2 into the 3rd chain, skip 2 into the 3rd chain, putting a double or UK treble, chain 2, skip 2, double or UK treble, chain 2, skip 2. So whatever part of the chain you decide to go in, you have just got to make sure you continue that all the way. And actually I'm not that happy with that stitch formation. When I'm filming it's a bit tricky. I tend to start doing some random things because I can't really, I'm trying to look at the camera and what I'm doing at the same time. So if you've done the correct number of chains for your starting chain, you should, after you've made the 9th block, the 9th square, you should have you should have used up the last stitch. But remember, I did 2 extra stitches just to be on the safe side. I've got 2 left over now, which I'm not actually all that bothered about. And I'm just going to have a quick look here at this first row. So you should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I've got 9 empty blocks. And again, I'm not sure whether I need to adjust my starting chain yet. Mine's not very even actually, and I think that is just because I'm filming and talking. This is one of those stitches where it looks best when you're kind of quite neat. Anyway, so this is it at the end of row 1. Let's do row 2. So we're going to start with a chain 5. So 3 of those chains are going to be representing 1 double crochet or UK treble, and then the next set of 2 are actually going to be representing a chain space. So I tend to do the chain on the previous row at the end of the previous row before I turn the work. So I've done my chain 5, and now I'm literally skipping this chain at the beginning, this last stitch and the chain, and I'm going into this second stitch. And remember, you're looking at this on the back now. So when you follow up the post, the top of this stitch is slightly to the left. Okay, so if this was facing the right way, then this would be the top of the stitch to the right. But because we're looking at it from the wrong side, the top of the stitch is sort of slightly above and slightly to the left. So we're going to double crochet in there. Okay, chain 2. So you can probably guess now this is pretty straightforward. We're going to skip the chain space, and then we're going to crochet into the top of the next double crochet from the previous row with another double crochet. And again, the only thing you've got to watch out for here is that you are looking at this from the wrong side. So make sure you tilt this top edge forward so that you can see both front and back loop of the stitches, to make sure you're going into the correct part. So that's what's going to keep this stitch looking really neat. Going into the correct part of the stitch, keeping your chains true to hook size, and making sure that these double crochets are kept nice and neat. So you can see this is a very easy to memorize and quite intuitive what you're doing. One of the other things I've seen where it can look a bit messy is as you come to make this double crochet, people sometimes lose control of this live loop. So just show you, exaggerating there, that I've allowed this live loop to stretch as I've gone in to make the stitch, and that then results in the top of that stitch being much baggier than the rest. So again, this is just one of those stitch sequences that tends to look much better if you keep good control of the live loop and crochet the chains true to hook size. So I'm going along, and now of course the only slight thing here that's different for this is the end. So it's always the beginnings and ends of these kinds of stitches that you have to keep an eye on. So chain 2, and then I'm going to finish with a double crochet, and I need to go into what would have been the top of a double, but in this case is a chain. So I find the easiest way to do this is just to roll so you can read the chain. So obviously in the stitch sequence I'm always skipping 2 chains, so this is the easiest way to do it. I'm going to skip 1, I'm going to skip 2, this is the 3rd one along, if you're counting towards the left, from the last stitch that was made of row 1. And I'm going through both the front and the back loop of that chain. So I've just got the back ridge of that chain on the hook. So we're not just going round the whole thing, because that stitch will be sliding around. We're not just picking up one element of the chain. We're treating the chain just like any other stitch through both loops, and then we're going to make the last double. So this is what it's looking like at the end of row 2. So obviously we've got a little bit of funny business going on here. As you can see, this first bit here can end up looking rounded, but it's not really going to look correct until it's been washed and blocked, and depending what else you're doing with it, maybe even seamed. And also the start of row 1, we've got the same, row 2 rather, we got the same problem. You need to use a yarn that has got stitch memory. So for example, cotton like this, linen, or even wool. These kind of stitches really don't look good in acrylic yarn, because acrylic yarn is plastic and it has got no stitch memory. And to be fair, that is the least of its problems. And again, here I've got this funny little bit of chain where I've got too much chain, and I'm just going to quickly reverse undo that, which is very easy. I'm not entirely sure I'm happy with the gauge of my starting chain. I think it needs to be a little bit tighter, but again, this is why we swatch, so that we can identify these issues. Right, so basically that second row is what we're just continually repeating. So I'm going to do row 3 just to show you again. So we always start with a chain 5. 3 of the chains will be the last stitch, and 2 of the chains are going to be the chain space. Turn the work around to the other side, and then you're going to be doing a double crochet or UK treble into the top of the what is essentially the second stitch, because that one there is the first. Chain 2, skip the whole chain area, double crochet through both loops of the next double. Chain 2, double crochet, chain 2, double crochet, chain 2, and again, I think the trickiest part of this whole stitch pattern is basically the end of the row, knowing where to go. But again, the easiest thing is just where you've made this last stitch, you're going to count back to the 3rd empty chain. You've got 1, 2, here's my 3rd. Make sure you can read the chain properly, so try not to read it from the back. I'm reading it from the side. I've got an empty chain there. That first one is often quite squished. Empty chain, 3rd chain. That always wants to move around. You have to kind of stabilize it and persuade the hook to go in there, and you're going to put your double last stitch in there. So This is it after 3 rows. I'm going to do a few more rows before I'm just going to square it off actually. So I'm just going to keep going until it's square. So I've finished my little swatch, so I'm going to cut the yarn to yarn over and pull the tail end through to fasten off. So I did actually restart my swatch just because I decided that I wasn't 100% happy with my starting chain. It was a bit too loose, so I just redid it with a slightly tighter gauge. Next up, I am actually going to wash and block this, which you should always do, especially if you are planning on making an item of clothing with this. So here is the finished result that I have now washed and blocked, and you can see how washing and blocking, especially in natural fibres, really helps to set the stitches and even everything out. And incidentally, this is kind of the foundation or the main sort of skeleton stitch structure that you use for filet crochet. I've got a selection of other mesh stitch patterns that I'm currently working on that are all variations of this, so keeping it nice and simple. Once you know how to make this basic structure, you can create lots of quite simple but effective stitch sequences. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that. Let me know if you give it a go, especially if you actually make something out of this stitch.